All right, let's dive into one of the most fundamental questions we face every single day. Why do we buy the things we buy? It sounds like a simple question, right? But behind every single purchase, there's this incredibly complex web of invisible forces and mental processes going on. Okay, let's get into it.
Seriously, take a second. That coffee, those shoes, that app you just downloaded. Why that one? Was it the price, the brand? Or is it something else entirely? Something you can't quite put your finger on? We're going to peel back the layers of that decision and follow the journey all the way from a vague want to the final click.
You know, long before you even think about shopping, there's a whole set of external forces already shaping your tastes, your preferences, and what you even consider buying. So let's start there, with the big picture influences that kind of define who you are as a consumer.
It really boils down to three giant forces. First, you've got the culture you were raised in. That's the foundation. Then you have the social circles you run in, your friends, your family, that really influence your day-to-day choices. And finally, there are the personal factors that make you, well, you. Let's break each of these down.
First up, culture. And you can really think of this as your basic operating system. It's the programming you get from just growing up in a particular society. So for example, if you grew up in the United States, you were probably surrounded by values like achievement, individualism, and material comfort. This cultural programming shapes your most basic wants long before a brand ever gets in front of you.
Next up, you've got social factors. We're all part of different groups, right? Our family, our friends, our coworkers. These are our reference groups, and they create this powerful, often unspoken pressure to conform. A brand like Hot Topic is an absolute master at this. They don't just sell t-shirts, they tap directly into a subculture, figuring out who the opinion leaders are and what's trending to make their stuff feel totally authentic.
And finally, it gets personal. On one side, you have the practical stuff, your job and your economic situation. That pretty much dictates what you can even afford. During a tough economy, a no-frills gym like Snap Fitness suddenly looks way more appealing. But on the other side, it's about your lifestyle and values. People who are all about lifestyles of health and sustainability, or LOHAS, they're going to actively hunt down organic food and eco-friendly products, which creates a totally different shopping list.
Okay, so we've covered the outside world. Now let's go inside the mind. This is what marketers call the psychological black box, that mysterious space between seeing an ad and actually making a decision.
So, a huge key to cracking open that black box is understanding motivation. Maslow's famous pyramid shows that our needs are stacked. We have to take care of the basics first, food, water, safety, before we can even start to worry about higher-level stuff like belonging or feeling good about ourselves. The takeaway from marketers is huge. You have to know which need your product is really satisfying. I mean, a person who's starving isn't thinking about a luxury car.
And then there's perception, and this is everything. Because in marketing, how a consumer perceives things is way more important than objective reality. We get hit with thousands of messages a day, so our brands have to filter. We pay attention to things that are relevant to us right now. That's called selective attention. And we even twist information to fit what we already believe. That's selective distortion. So if you're a diehard fan of a certain phone brand, you might just ignore bad reviews or explain them away. Your brain is literally editing reality on the fly.
And this is a perfect illustration of how those perceptions get stored in our heads. A brand like State Farm doesn't exist in your memory as a list of facts. No, it's a web of connected ideas or nodes. The second you think State Farm, your brain might fire off safe, which triggers good neighbor, which then triggers dependable. The entire goal of branding is to build a strong, positive network just like this one, right inside the consumer's mind.
So, with all these influences and psychological gears turning in the background, how do we actually end up buying something? Let's walk through the practical, step-by-step path that we usually follow.
For any biggish purchase, we tend to go through these 5 stages. It all starts with recognizing a problem, like, my laptop is so slow. Then you start searching for info, reading reviews, asking friends. After that, you evaluate your options, you make the purchase, and then you decide how you feel about it afterward. Now, of course, if you're just buying a pack of gum, you're probably going to skip right to the end.
This shows that whole evaluation stage in action. Just think of it like a funnel. Out of all the laptop brands that exist in the entire world, that's the total set. You're only even aware of a handful. From that group, you only seriously consider an even smaller number. That gets narrowed down to your final 2 or 3 options, and then you make a decision. For any brand, the very first fight is just to get into your awareness set at all.
But hold on, The story isn't over just because you've paid and walked out the door. What happens next is absolutely critical for whether you become a loyal fan or a one-time buyer who tells everyone to stay away. This is the absolute key. Your satisfaction has nothing to do with how good a product is in a vacuum. Nope, it's all about how it performs compared to your expectations. If it does what you expected, you're satisfied. If it falls short, you're disappointed. But, and this is the magic part, if it exceeds your expectations, you are delighted. And that is how you create a customer for life.
And believe it or not, marketers are also obsessed with what you do with the product after you're done with it. Do you just toss it? Do you resell it online? Do you find a clever new use for it, like turning an old jar into a cup for pens? How quickly you get rid of something and replace it is a huge driver of sales, so companies are always thinking about how to speed up that replacement cycle. So far, we've laid out this pretty neat, very logical model of how we shop, but here comes the twist. It turns out we are not nearly the rational, calculating machines we like to think we are.
And the short answer to that is no, not even close. There's this whole field of behavioral economics that has shown again and again that our decision-making is just packed with biases, shortcuts, and weird quirks that completely defy logic.
To deal with a ridiculously complex world, our brains use what are called heuristics. They're basically mental shortcuts or rules of thumb. For example, there's the availability heuristic. That means we think things are more likely to happen if we can easily remember an example, like a recent news story about a shark attack. Or there's the representativeness heuristic, where we judge something based on how much it fits a stereotype, like assuming a product with really slick minimalist packaging must be high quality.
So you really have these two different views of how we make choices. The classic model, on the left, assumes we're like little computers, carefully weighing all the pros and cons. But the behavioral economics view, on the right, shows that we often just use these shortcuts, focusing on one or two things and ignoring everything else, which can lead to choices that don't really make sense on paper.
Oh, and here's a fantastic example of our irrationality, mental accounting. We literally treat money differently depending on where it came from or what we plan to do with it. Picture this. You bought a $50 concert ticket, but you lose it on your way to the show. A lot of people wouldn't buy another one. Now, what if you just lost a $50 bill on your way to the box office? You'd probably still buy the ticket. Why? It's the same $50. But in our heads, the concert budget was already spent in the first scenario. It's totally illogical, but it's how our brains work.
And that really leaves us with this powerful idea from behavioral economist Dan Ariely. The journey of a simple purchase shows just how complex we are. We're a mix of culture, social pressure, some rational thought, and a whole lot of deeply ingrained, irrational biases. And the more we understand these hidden forces, the more we can understand not just marketing, but maybe a little more about ourselves.